Now, without further ado, let's kick off our first keynote with a real heavy hitter. Tim Jones is the founder and program director of Future Agenda, a unique and ambitious global project that brings together some of the best minds around the world to discuss the greatest challenges for the next decade. Tim is a globally recognized expert in the innovation, growth, and futures arenas. And he joins us today from London to give us exclusive foresight on the 6 key challenges in innovation and major global opportunities. With a round of applause, please, let's welcome our first keynote speaker of the day, Mr. Tim Jones. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity to share some thoughts. Just listening to some of the opening conversations, I think it's always important when we're looking for new innovation opportunities to not only look at what are the issues and the challenges that we see before us today, but also try and have some idea of maybe what's coming in the next few years, next 5 years, and what may well be some of the big issues of tomorrow. So this is a sort of a short talk just to give you a flavor of what people around the world are talking about when they're talking about the next 10 years, and to identify maybe some of the issues that you may recognize, but also some issues which may be new in terms of thinking, well, there's a challenge, there's an opportunity for innovation. So really what I wanted to do was, there we go. What I wanted to do is just sort of quickly share 3 things. First of all, at a big picture, what maybe is some of the big challenges at a global level. Secondly, give you some sample perspectives from some of the discussions we had last year around the world, 120 workshops in 45 countries with 5,000 people saying, okay, what do you think are the big shifts that are taking place? And then end by just profiling in a bit more detail 6 innovation opportunities which other people seem to think are important that may help provoke your thinking in terms of how you can innovate and how you can change the status quo. So in terms of the challenges, clearly we're in a world where there's increasing uncertainty, technology is playing a major role, but equally social changes are having a big impact. And if you bring all that together, some of the things that people are asking is, if we're in a world with another billion, another 2 billion people, and we've got increasing inequality, and we've got people moving, how are we actually going to deal with the challenges of accommodating those people in the most appropriate way, in the most appropriate places? As we increasingly move to cities, we're well over 50% of us now living in cities, will be 70% in the next 15 years. How are those cities going to have to be designed? How are those cities going to have to respond to that increasing migration of people? You know, you talk to the UN, their view is around about 1/3 of the world's population in urban populations currently live in slums because people are moving in quicker than the cities can accommodate them. So what opportunities and what challenges does that present? From a power perspective, it's interesting, we're quite clearly in a transition where the center of gravity of economic power and maybe other power is moving back this direction away from the West. There's a very good map created by McKinsey last year which plots where the center of economic power has been over the past 2,000 years. And we've had basically, it was centered in sort of northern Iraq for around about the first 1,000 years and then moved into Europe, temporarily went into the Atlantic for a few years and is now quickly heading back this way. So how in that big transition, how does innovation help to respond to some of the challenges that are going to come up? We're clearly in a world which is increasingly multicultural. We're clearly in a world where people's values are shifting. Some people are going forwards, some people are going backwards. What is it about the way that people's beliefs are changing that maybe is going to help give some stimulus and give some challenges? And how is that going to impact our behavior? Are we going to continue over the next 10, 20 years to behave in the same way as we have in the past? Or are there new types of behavior emerging? And then lastly, from a business perspective, as some of the sustainability impacts have place, but also some of the wider social challenges have broader impact. How are organizations going to be judged, not just on the financials, but on their wider impacts, etc.? So these are just some of the questions. They're not the answers. These are the questions that everywhere in the world people are asking in different ways. In certain parts of the world, it's a focus on 2 or 3 of these. Elsewhere, it's across the reach. So if we're going to have a view of how to answer these questions, then we need to maybe have a view of what people think are going to be the big changes. And the problem about the future is that nobody knows the answer at all. There is no expert. I know nothing about the future more than you do. Everybody has an opinion, and the challenge is trying to identify the common issues that unify and therefore help people align, but also understand some of the wild cards. So what we do is basically have a perspective that if we go and talk to as many informed people around the world as possible and run workshops and share different perspectives and get people to challenge each other's views, around those various topics, we may be able to see certain things emerging which tell us about the changes that maybe are taking place. And if we do that across a whole range of topics, we don't just talk about cities and we don't just talk about health, but we talk about, in our case, 20-odd different things. You're going to start to see the connections between when people are talking about trust and when people are talking about data and people are talking about privacy. Where is everything interconnecting and what are maybe some of the big shifts taking place? So within that context, just a few things that people are saying. From a technical point of view, we've had lots of expectation over the years that we're all going to be able to be connected and take advantage of whether it's the Internet of Things or just wider broadband connectivity. The general view seems to be that if we go 10 years forward, pretty much everybody will have the ability to be connected. Whether you're in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the ocean, you will have the connectivity option. The challenge is what you do with that. If you talk to the IBM, they talk about 1 trillion sensors in the world. If you talk to people like Ericsson and Nokia, they talk about 50 billion SIM cards by 2020. Now, obviously, there's only 8 billion of us, so that's a lot of other things that are being connected. So there's this general perspective that the connectivity and the information and the data will be there. Our challenge is to make sense of that data in a safe and secure way, but also make sense of it in terms of helping us identify new opportunities. From a population perspective, a lot of people are less concerned about another billion people on the planet, another 2 billion people on the planet, but more concerned with the imbalance that's taking place. In certain parts of the world, the demographics are shifting, fewer babies, more old people, and whether it's Japan, it's China, Italy, there's lots of countries which are starting to get an imbalance in terms of demographics that they've never experienced before. And at the same time, we're also getting, at a regional level, areas where there's lots of people, areas like India where there's a perfect demographic pyramid, and areas like Europe where you've got a naturally declining population. So how does migration help fill some of the gaps over the next 10 years is clearly a politically contentious issue, but it's also one of the pragmatic perspectives that the people aren't necessarily where the resources are, so we clearly need to expect that movement will take place. I mentioned on the shifting power and influence. I think that that's the real challenge for a lot of organizations is if they're used to a New York, London, Singapore, Dubai axis, how's that going to change when maybe it becomes more of a Dubai, Singapore, Shanghai axis and the decreasing influence of some of the large names that we see from today? Or will that not happen? There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment of clearly American elections coming up, but there's lots of uncertainty about whether the US will continue to have a global perspective or you'll see a bit of a retrenchment. And some of the underlying consequences of that are causing people to ask lots of questions about where the power and influence is going to be. One of the specific challenges that people keep on pointing out to is that as we get better at healthcare, as we all can live longer because healthcare is so much better, the cost of that is increasing. You know, if you, in India it's about 4% of GDP, in China it's 6%, in the States it's 18%, heading towards 20%. And many are now questioning as to how far can we go? If everybody believes that investing in healthcare is a good thing for all the obvious reasons, at what point do we start to say we can't afford this anymore? And what are the difficult choices that need to be made around obesity, around behavior, around the type of support that organizations can give? So while there's lots of technology that can help, and there's lots of policies that are being developed, the big underlying concern is the affordability of the healthcare that everybody's getting used to expecting and how that can play out. Lots of people getting very excited about driverless cars, autonomous vehicles. We do quite a lot of work in that area, and it's interesting when people say, well, where is it all going to happen first? You look at Google, you look at Tesla, you hear about what Apple are doing, you look at BMW. When are we going to start to see all these driverless cars around? And the answer seems to be probably you'll see them on the highways pretty soon, but you won't see them everywhere. There's fundamental problems like roundabouts that self-driving cars and people just don't interact with very well together at the same point. But people are seeing that actually it'll be in the area of logistics and trucks where autonomy is first delivered. So Amazon are talking about having effectively little robots going around urban areas delivering packages that are self-guided electric vehicles, and at the other end of the scale you're getting these sort of truck platoons that the likes of Volvo and Scania are working on. So that's one truck at the front followed by 20 at the back. So a lot of the technology is there. The regulation is a bit tricky in different parts of the world, but the place where people think that autonomy will happen first is very much in the trucks and in the logistics area, and then it'll flow through into the passenger space. When you ask people about the biggest challenges, one of the ones that comes up, and it's not just China, it's not just India, it's not just here, it's just as much in Brazil, in the States and everywhere, is the pollution that's increasingly around us at a local level, but particularly within urban environments. You know, when we were in Beijing, people were saying they're delaying having their child by 5 years in the hope that the air quality improves, so the chance of asthma is decreasing. So one of the big issues, and this seems to have been the issue which has accelerated over the past 2 or 3 years, that people will talk about more, is air quality. We used to talk about things like climate change and particulates, and people didn't really get it. Air quality seems to have been the embodiment of lots of complex things into something that's tangible. People can see the problem, they can see the smoke, they can see their children having more asthma, and doing something about it has now almost become a tipping point. This is one of the things which people see is going to cause huge change of behavior and a positive platform for innovation, because it's such a simple problem, but the answer is so complex. Because this is about interacting transport with health, with city design, with energy policy. There's a lot of things to change to solve this problem, but it's a really easy problem. So one of those challenges that people talk about a lot. Flipping it around, I mentioned about everybody being connected. There's lots of assumptions that data has value. There's lots of people who are almost doing a land grab to try and grab as much information, as much data as they have, and they can get their hands onto, because they think there is value in data, whether it's cars, whether it's consumer information, whether it's mobility. Lots of startups are looking at how data can create value, and at the same time there's lots of people saying maybe we need to be a bit more selective. Maybe data is going to be there more of an enabler to creating value, but there is no value in the data itself. So a big debate going on as to, is the data worth money, or actually is it what you do with it that's worth money, and you don't need to own the data in order to be able to do the clever stuff. So a big challenge there in terms of, do I need my data, do I need your data, and do I need to own it, or can I just borrow it for a millisecond and do something useful with it? Linked to that, around the world, very different views of privacy. If you're in Washington talking to the State Department and Google and Facebook, you have a completely different conversation about privacy than you would in Singapore. You know, in one of the conversations we had in Singapore, people were saying, well, we're going to put effectively a Fitbit on every 5-year-old child, and we'll monitor their health 24/7, and if there's a problem, we'll identify which child it is, and we'll help either bring them into the medical services or alert their parents, etc. That whole concept is based on a huge amount of trust in the government and a huge amount of willingness to take a step forward that you will not find in many other countries around the world. That level of government control of children's health or access to children's health data would not fly within the European Union. So it's interesting just to sort of see, although it's a big issue, that the nuances are very different around the world about how privacy is going to change and what's going to put that forward. A couple of others, just very quickly. Access to transport is seen as one of the big shifts. That, again, if we can get more efficient transport, we can be far more efficient in terms of how we use our space. Very simple example, if you compare Hong Kong with Los Angeles. Hong Kong uses around about 5% of its total GDP in moving everybody and everything around. So effectively, there's a lost 5% of economic output goes into